Welcome back to another Emerald Dream card review. We're down to our second last card review. I can't believe it. This time around is Death Knight. We got this super cool new legendary design. We've got some duels cards almost, sort of kind of making it into Death Knight as well. So some exciting stuff to talk about. Before we get into it though, real quick, I wanted to do a correction on Agamagon. In my last review, I mentioned that Blizzard told us this card couldn't overkill the opponent. In other words, if they had like 8 health and you wanted to play a 10 mana card, you wouldn't be able to play the 10 mana card. But after the reveal, the tune had changed and Blizzard said instead, it can overkill people. So if they have 8 health, and you want to play a 10 mana card after Agamagon, you can use that to kill the opponent, even though the cost is higher than their available health. It doesn't have to be exact or less than. So in other words, you can take them into negative numbers, which I'll say is like a little bit less intuitive to me. It's kind of weird that you can spend health because this is framed as a cost. You can spend health that they don't have. That's a little strange, but it does make the card better. Now it's just like, okay, if they have 8 and I can kill them with a 10 mana card, that's awesome. So little correction there, a little bit of miscommunication, confusion from Blizzard, but no biggie, all sorted out and an improvement to the card. So that said, let's go ahead and talk about Nithindra here, this new Death Knight card. It is a 7 mana 7/7 undead dragon. It is double unholy rune, maybe a little inconvenient there. It is taunt and death rattle split into 1/1 beetles. At the start of your turn, reform with any remaining. And you can see here the Nithindric beetles. So in theory, this is kind of like an awkward little 2-part puzzle for the opponent to solve. They push through the Nithindra, then they've got this board of beetles, which is, a totally different shape of stuff to deal with. If they can't deal with all the beetles, then the Nithindra comes back and the problem starts all over again. Now, if they deal with some of the beetles, the Nithindra is then going to be smaller. So if there's 7 beetles, let's say they kill 3 beetles, you've got 4 beetles remaining, you're going to get a 4/4 Nithindra. That does make the next chain of Nithindra a little bit easier to deal with, of course. Then there's only 4 beetles, then maybe you kill 3 of those again, and you get a 1/1 Nithindra, right? It's a problem that goes away eventually, even if you don't deal with it super effectively. Now, I did hear from Blizzard, let's assume this one's right, is that buffs here on the beetles don't reform with a bigger Nithindra. So if you have like a board of 7 beetles and you give those like a 1/1 buff to make them all 2/2s, they're not going to reform into a 14/14. They're still going to reform into a 7/7. And I'm assuming, although I don't know for sure, that if you have a smaller Nithindra, like it reforms as a 4/4, and you give it a buff, you're probably still only going to get 4 beetles. You're not going to get like 5 beetles if you give it a 1/1 buff, but I don't know that one for sure. Either way, kind of no matter how the mechanics of this work, I'm not really convinced this is all that good. It is kind of a high friction, annoying card to deal with, but I also don't really think it's like a high pressure card to deal with necessarily either. In other words, I just don't think dealing with both halves of this is really all that problematic. Particularly 1/1s are just so easy to sweep up with any little AoE effect that, pushing through Nithindra with a couple minion trades or a good cheap removal spell, dealing with most of the beetles, the threat has really been kind of reduced immediately. I look at this and I kind of just see this card, Violet Worm, who I certainly had to find this. I couldn't remember the name, of course, for a Kobolds and Catacombs card. It's very similar, right? Like, yes, this does not have the ability to reform and kind of like repopulate that new threat. But at the same time, like if you were dealing with Violet Worms, you're going to deal with Nithindra just as effectively. And like, so it's just a little bit of a fit consideration there. It's like, is the awkwardness of this card going to be enough in matchups where it matters? And I don't really think it's going to be enough. I think it's going to feel a bit too clunky as far as I'm concerned. And it's going to end up being that worm, Violet Worm, most of the time, which just doesn't match up with modern Hearthstone. So moving on to the rest of these Death Knight cards, I love this little set, dude. Number 1, crazy dark artwork, horrifying. The Sanguine Infestation, a 4-mana double blood card. This draws 2 cards and summons 2 0/2 leeches. And these leeches are basically the priest cards from Duels, the Void Fiends. that steal health. Now they're a little different. The Bloated Leech, 1 mana, 0/2 beast. At the end of your turn, your hero steals 1 health from the lowest health enemies. These don't always go face. Sometimes these will hit minions on board. If the board is empty, of course, they can go face. They're not limited to minions, but most of the time they're probably going to be hitting minions, which is actually kind of a good thing, I think, in Standard. You're not necessarily going to want these for lethality, but you do kind of want them to live as much as possible, and removing minions from board slightly increases the chance that they survive. Now, at only 2 health, again, kind of easy to sweep these up, not ultimately that threatening on board or that survivable on board. But I do like the idea that you just start building these up, and just, every little time you're gaining a tiny bit of health, you're just growing and growing and growing. And if your opponent's kind of dealing with these, even if they're absorbing little hits from minions and stuff, that's also potentially buying you health and buying you time. And these become a way to kind of grind out this defensive life gain game plan that I don't think totally sucks, because these are the kind of cards like, God, I have to kill that stupid leech. And it's like, I just, I gotta figure it out. And this is not the only card. We're also going to see the Hideous Husk here, another Blood Rune, 1 this time, 6 cost, 3/5, Undead Beast. Your leeches steal 2 more health from their victims. Summon 2 0/2 leeches. So, number 1, can't leave any on board going into turn 6, or the Husk is just going to murder you, right? Like, that's going to be a crazy amount of health gain. Well, not crazy amount, even more annoying amount of health gain. It's not crazy. It's still only 3 per leech, but it's an annoying amount anyway. Also, suddenly start dealing with like 3/3s on board and stuff. More effective as a board clear tool. And you just like, God, I really got to deal with this. Plus, it's summoning 2 leeches on its own. So, that's immediately a little 6 health swing there. And we actually have one more as well. The Infested Breath. 2 mana spell this time. This one deals 2 and summons a 0/2 leech, which I really like this a lot, because that deal 2 damage could kind of help you set up the right targets and set up the math so that the leeches hit the things that you want them to hit, which seems really valuable for these cards. So really neat little 3-card cycle here. Certainly, blood focused if you want to get the infestation here, double blood. But I kind of like this, dude. I love the idea of like a total health gain Death Knight, where you're just trying to get as big of a health total as possible. It's like these have just enough interactivity on board, because they can clear board minions, that I think they're solid. If these were only hitting face like in duels, I think this would actually be kind of hard to work around in some cases. You wouldn't have that kind of like crazy lethality that duels has. So it would be hard to like finish the deal or seal the deal based on all this little chip damage. But the fact that these can clean up minions, this helps you deal with little board problems. That makes it, to me, a little bit more intriguing. So you're solving board problems while still building up all those health totals. That's pretty cool. This one, to me, also, 4 mana, kind of expensive for card draw, but you're getting some board out of it, getting a little impact there. Not much. It's kind of like draw 2, heal 2, deal 2. Like a really, really tiny ultimate infestation. It's the Sanguine infestation. So not the most exciting card of the package. This definitely feels really nice at 6. Like, you're healing 6 off this. You're dealing 6 to the board very often. That's pretty good. And then Breath also feels like a really nice flexible tool as well. So these 2 cards feel stronger to me, but I think Infestation still makes the cut. So a neat little cycle. I'm going to have a lot of fun playing this one for sure. And then next up here, we have some like corpse spending cards. This is 3 mana, 2 Unholy, Corpse Flower, a 0/5 Undead. After your opponent summons a minion, spend 2 corpses to deal 3 damage to it, which this is kind of cool, really annoying little card. Like, you could imagine some smaller aggro decks just hating the Corpse Flower. Like, oh my God, are you serious? I cannot build a board against this thing. As long as you have corpses to spend, you could really shut down your opponent's plays. Now, that said, 3 health it's solid early, but really, even on turn 3 when you're playing this, a lot of decks have stuff that's already getting into the 4 or more health range. So I think there will be plenty of ways for opponents to kind of work around this, establish something. Plus, most decks have like a weapon or, a big enough rush minion that they just clean this up and don't have to deal with this long term. So I don't think the like shutouts are all that likely. I guess the question is like, is dealing 3 to something that survives, or is like clearing maybe even just 1 or 2 things, does that make the Corpse Flower worth it? Especially if you're you know, for some reason or another, looking to spend some corpses for whatever kind of corpse activation we are losing. The big one, the 10 mana spell, the necrotic explosion or whatever, is going away with rotation, but that might not be the only reason you want to spend corpses. So also this is double unholy, so it wouldn't be in a rainbow deck regardless, but you get the idea. So I don't know, I think this is kind of cool, kind of funny. I think it's moderately okay, just probably not super synergistic and a little bit unreliable. There will be matchups where this just feels like completely pointless and dead and dies for free, and that's going to hold this back from seeing like crazy levels of play. But I think it's one where people will still experiment with this and try to have some fun, especially like stacking 2 of these up together is pretty cool. Also do note it says summons, not just plays, so even like tokens coming into board and stuff could still get wiped out by the corpse flower. So definitely a neat little card design, if not kind of terrifying and frustrating on occasion. Moving on here to the Morbid Swarm, 1 mana spell, Blood Unholy. Choose 1, summon 2 1/1 ants, or spend 2 corpses to deal 4 damage to a minion. So that's our choose 1 for Death Knight. I actually think this is okay. Just getting a couple ants down seems fine to me. You know, you're just happy to get some bodies to get all these corpses going in Death Knight. That seems reasonable. And having that flexibility so that this isn't a totally dead card late. Sometimes, you know, turn 7 or something, you don't care about 1/1 ants, but you know, 4 damage to a minion is something you're often okay to flex into a turn. So I think the fact that it's solid on 1 and okay later does make this card a nice little filler. Probably one that doesn't make it into a like full 6-set deck, but for now seems like a good little card to toss in. Moving on to Rite of Atrocity, a 1 mana unholy spell. This allows you to discover an undead and then spend 2 corpses to give it a dark gift. You know, the 1 mana is definitely going to feel paid off by that dark gift, so you don't mind the little tax on this because the dark gift is usually worth more than 1 mana. And then discovering an undead, you know, it's a mixed bag. You're going to feel like sometimes that's underwhelming. Other times you're going to feel like, okay, nice curve fill. Like I played this on 1. I found a 2-drop. I'm happy. It's got some extra stats or something. Okay, cool. And then occasionally you're going to find like a home run and you're going to say, oh my God, that is a giant undead with charge. I'm saving that for later. That's kind of amazing. So this is just a nice little flexible tool that has just enough bonus on it to make it feel worth it. And then our final Death Knight card here is the Monstrous Mosquito, a 1 mana 1/2 beast. At the end of your turn, give your other minions +1 attack. So tiny little buff guy here. We just saw those 0/2 leeches. Could be nice to give those some attack value, but keep in mind, this is at the end of your turn, which it's okay for the leeches because they were kind of helpless anyway. Giving them 1 attack, you know, makes them feel better against like 1/1s trading into them or something, but it doesn't really make this card feel all that satisfying as like an aggressive follow-up because you're not going to get to attack with the stuff that's been buffed. It's probably going to die off before the next turn when you actually get to use this attack buff. And I think that's going to make this feel rather unrewarding and clunky to play. Like on occasion, yeah, okay, I buffed things and they're better defensively against trades or whatever, and that's cool, but I don't think that's going to be good enough to make a cut in a deck. You're going to feel like that's just so unrewarding most of the time that it's just like, okay, I don't really need to run this card. It's just a 1 mana 1/2 that doesn't do enough for me. So even though it does have some cool little lines compared to like the crazy buffs you see in Death Knight right now with Zergs and all that, this just doesn't even feel like it keeps up remotely close. Now, you know, Zergs are potentially getting nerfed. We got all these teases for nerfs. So like, you know, maybe not super fair to compare those right now, but that's just what it's been taking to be good in Hearthstone these days. And this just doesn't even come near to that level as far as I'm concerned. So I don't think this is going to be good in Hearthstone these days. All right, so all that said, let's go ahead and rate these cards from 1 to 5 stars. Nithindra is a 3-star card. Sanguine Infestation is a 3-star card. Hideous Husk is a 4-star card. Infested Breath is a 4-star card. Corpse Flower is a 3-star card. Morbid Swarm is a 3-star card. Rite of Atrocity is a 4-star card. Monstrous Mosquito is a 2-star card. And yeah, there you go. That's the Death Knight set. I almost gave Nithindra 2 stars, but I think, you know, in this smaller meta, as we say often, 4 sets are all we have right now. I think there's a chance it pops into a deck, just a top end, nothing else to run kind of card, but then falls off pretty fast. So this would be kind of like a 2.5-star card for me if I did halves, but we don't. We force ourselves to go for full numbers. So anyway, share your thoughts on this one. Share your thoughts on all those cards down below. Let me know what you think. Stay tuned. I think maybe Wednesday is our final review. And then we got some like theory crafting decks and stuff. I'm going to do theory crafting, try to get you quite a few cool decks. I'm actually pretty excited to play a lot of these. Excited to play Leech, Death Knight here, for instance. That looks really fun to me. So share those thoughts. Thanks much as always for watching. And until next time, game on.